What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. So we're talking the secondary market in this video, and this isn't really a market watch. I'm not going to be discussing a whole bunch of cards and their price fluctuations specifically. I'm going to be talking about some of the factors that make the secondary market such a volatile place, and one of the biggest ones that kind of irks me because I feel like it gives the secondary market a negative connotation. For starters, just because the secondary market does have fluctuations doesn't mean that it's it's not a bad thing necessarily. People kind of have been looking at the secondary market as such an evil place and such a bad thing in Yu-Gi-Oh, but there are going to be fluctuations because of factors that we the players can't necessarily control, such as reprints. When cards get reprinted or there are reprints announced, usually the cards, especially if they're hard to pull, if they're high rarity cards that are just really difficult to get, their prices are going to go down because we're getting more supply, and generally the demand doesn't necessarily go up. It kind of stays the same, but we're getting more supply. So it works off supply and demand. You know, look at like the Cosmos or Ghost Ogre Snow Rabbits as examples. Very hard cards to pull, like Dark Destroyer. You see their values going down because there's just going to be a lot more of them, so they're not as difficult to get a hand on. A second factor is when you get new cards that are announced or new archetypes, and then they have like a specific interaction with old cards. A prime example is this is when Breaker of Shadows, when they announced that when Konami announced that Cyber Dragon Infinity was going to be in Breaker of Shadows, a card like Ptolemaeus' price kind of went through the roof because everybody knew that Ptolemaeus was the easiest way to get to Cyber Dragon Infinity, and if you ran a rank 4 deck, then you could pretty much have access to a Cyber Dragon Infinity, which is what, a rank 6 monster that you're supposed to technically use by using like machines and shit, but ain't nobody got time for that. But that's another example too. Now, like, I don't think that those are looked at as negatives because they're completely out of the player's control. Like, you have no control over what gets reprinted other than if Konami puts out a poll. But I think the biggest one, and this is one that I think that everybody just doesn't like, is Yugioh Sheep. Yugioh Sheep have a huge impact on the secondary market. I know some people like to think that Yu-Gi-Oh or Yugi-tubers kind of hype cards up and we have an impact. Like, we don't have any impact on the secondary market. I can discuss cards for days and the prices won't go up. I do, you know, is it viable? You see other like Yugi-tubers like Simo that do Tech Tuesdays. We do not make the prices of cards go up, but the Yu-Gi-Oh Sheep really do. Like, they're one of the biggest, I would even say that they are the single biggest driving force for the volatility, or the how volatile that the secondary market is, where you have a card like Leviair the Sea Dragon, and this was so predictable. I talked about this specifically on my Sunday Market Watch video. I said, look at Leviair the Sea Dragon, especially the Ultras and Generation Force, because Generation Force is a really old set, and it did get reprinted, but look, 2012 Collector's 10. I mean, it's 2016. That's at least 3 full years. Doesn't matter at what point in 2012. That would be over 3 full years since this card has been reprinted, and you know, you can't even find the ultimate rares, or I think there's like a rare version of Leviair too, but let's just stick with the holos. You can't even find the ultimate rares of Leviair because it completely sold out. And yes, by the way, I know you guys can see my email address. Believe me, I already get spammed with enough like emails for adult diapers and, you know, penis pills and hot Asian milfs, which I will be responding to those. But don't spam me with my email. Look, I decided just to experiment. Because I thought that this was incredibly predictable what would happen because of the Yu-Gi-Oh Sheep. On Sunday, the same day that I made the video, you see that I placed 2 orders for Leviairs, Ultra Rares, February 21st, 2016. I bought them at $470 and $458. I just decided, okay, I'm going to pick up a couple of Leviairs. I already had one in my binder that was collecting dust from my Dino Rabbit days. I was like, I guarantee you, because I know Yu-Gi-Oh, that these prices are going to go through the roof. Lo and behold, 2 days later, it's an $18 card because Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, when I say Yu-Gi-Oh Sheep, I generally mean the players that jump from deck to deck to deck to deck to deck, basically every other month to whatever is perceived to be the new best deck at the time, whatever is perceived to be the new hotness. Now, don't get me wrong, when, you know, a player like Jeff Jones, or, you know, at a YCS, when a player ends up making like top 4 with a deck that a lot of people didn't think had that type of potential, yes, it's very natural for people to have an increased interest in the deck. Like, whoa, you know, who thought that Phantom Knights would be like a top 5 deck in the game? Who thought that they would be, you know, contending with Monarchs and Cosmos for the title of best deck in the game, or with Draco Pals? Like, probably not a lot of people. So it's natural for us to have more interest. And I don't fault a player for saying, man, you know what, I'm going to pick that up, I'm going to play that at my next regional, didn't know that the deck was nearly that good, maybe have an increased interest in it. But when people do that over and over and over again, and it becomes a pattern of behavior, that's when I start classifying them as a Yu-Gi-Oh! Sheep. That's when I start thinking it's a negative thing, because, you know, like, Konami designs this game with so many archetypes that at least one of them should interest you, whether it be the lore or the mechanics or the play style or the artwork. But when people jump from deck to deck to deck without really having genuine interest in the deck, they just play it because, again, it's the new hotness. They perceive it as, oh man, you know, Jeff Jones went undefeated day 1 at UDS. Okay, Phantom Knights tier 0, let's play that deck now. This is what ends up increasing the prices of these cards exponentially, and that itself is a bad thing. When card prices go down because of reprints, or card prices go up because of future cards and interactions and stuff, I don't consider that necessarily a bad thing, because I just think it's completely, like, unavoidable. But this is completely avoidable, you know what I mean? For there to be all of these players who are jumping the Phantom Knights, who really didn't have any interest in the deck. Again, I understand that that's natural. Some of you guys are just curious, but the players who just do it over and over, like, let's just say that hypothetically Raid Raptors win the next YCS. For anybody who wants to play Phantom Knights today, for anybody who's like, ah, fuck Phantom Knights, dude, that's last week's news, I want to play Raid Raptors. Man, the player who does that, like, you're the player that I'm talking about. Like, you're the player that everybody hates, because you cause probably over a half of these fluctuations, and it kind of gives the secondary market such a negative connotation. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, don't be a slave to the secondary market. You know, I've never looked at certain decks and thought, okay, these decks are crazy expensive, but I have to play them to win, so I guess I'll just bite the bullet and pay these exorbitant prices. You know, you look at cards like Leviair and like Breaksword, we know these prices are inflated. We know this card is not worth $18. You know what I mean? Like, fuck that. Just build your own deck. Like, who's to say that Raid Raptors don't end up making top 4 at, like, the next YCS, and they become the fucking new hot thing? Like, rather than being caught up on a deck that you might not even really have interest in, and going out and buying all of this stuff for it to be last week's news potentially, like, go out and play Raid Raptors, or, you know, fucking Super Quantums or Cyframes. Go make the next wave of you know, make the next big boom or something like that in the secondary market, because I don't think the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sheep are going anywhere. I think that there are just a lot of players who don't give a fuck about whatever the deck is. They just think it's the new hotness, I'm gonna play it. If it is, you know, whatever deck I think gives me the best chance of winning, that's what I'm going to play. And right now, there's a lot of hype around Phantom Knights. Again, I'm not saying that just because a deck gets hyped, you should feel bad for having increased interest, or for even picking that deck up. But I think if you do it all the time, and then you generally stop having interest in the deck, but you still pick the cards up, then I think that you're starting to become part of the problem, in my opinion. And that's why the secondary market has such a negative look on it. That's why it has a negative connotation. So you guys let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, as always. Also, don't email me.